morning, everyone. My name is David Fabros, and I am a photographer. I also have a day job. I work with the Film Development Council of the Philippines for more than a year now. And I've been working in the media for the last 32 years, and 15 of those are in photography. I would like to think that although I'm not the expert on the subject, I have ample experience to share with you with regard to practical knowledge, on how to take good photos, how to take good photos or videos with specific applications to producing learning materials for school. In fact, now that we're entering to this new normal, it's more, we can predict that a lot of learning will be done online. And so aside from looking at a live person on screen, you will of course have to use still photographs and videos for your visualization or for your presentation. So it's important that we know some basic things about good photos and good the various ways that you can get good photos. Okay, so let's get started. Again, I do not have a degree in photography, but what I know is what I learned from many brilliant professionals in the field of photography here in the Philippines, in Singapore, and in the U.S. People who were very generous with sharing their abilities. And actually, this course does not require you to be experts either, or to be technically adept, or to be very good with a camera either. So all that we will discuss in this short few hours are basic principles on taking photos and capturing images. Okay, let's move. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right. Are you guys all seeing this? All right. So Shoot and Learn. That's a catchy title that we came up with. Because we were actually thinking of ways of how to compress all the things you need to learn about photography, about practical photography in 1 hour or so, but it's impossible. I'm telling you now, manage your expectations. We would not learn everything that you need to learn, but what this hour can equip you with is just a few survival level principles on how to get good photos. Okay, so very basic but good photography. Most of the photos that I'll use here are mine. I will let you know if they're not mine, and we'll get into that issue about photo credits later. All right, so let's move on. Okay, this is an important question. What are your photos for? Okay. Why are you taking these photos? Is this for class? Is this to tell a story to a group or to an audience? Is this to entertain? Is this to inform? So all of these decisions will need to be made before you even pick up a camera and go out and shoot something. But most of the time, what I use photography for, and I don't know if it's unique to myself, I think not, it's really a compulsion for me to tell somebody or somebody else about what I experienced. What I experienced at the moment that I saw this clown walking from across the street. This is in Paris, and this is at 6 a.m. in the morning. So people are walking their dogs, and then suddenly, from the corner of the street, I saw this clown walking, apparently maybe to work. This is on a Sunday, and I just found the story so poignant and so arresting. I had to take that photo, whip up my phone and take this photo and tell the story of this clown going to work on a weekend. So that was very special to me, and I knew I just had to get that picture, and I can use that picture to tell a story later on. Okay, let us talk about equipment. All right, like I said, you don't need to have the most expensive piece of equipment out there, right? These days, more photos are taken by phone cameras than any other DSLR or any other phone or any other video camera for that matter, no? So what is glaring to me, especially with the Instagram generation, is that people are really, are really using photography. People are using photography to do everything that they want to, everything in their lives, that they want to tell other people about. So it became a part of lifestyle. It became a part of relating and communicating stories, information, messages, and whatever else. Photography has suddenly become a very, very essential part of living in this time and age. So that's why it pays to have better pictures, because this is really what people will see from you, and sometimes you get judged by it. But no, you have to think about what you are communicating to people through your photos, and being able to take good photos is very essential to know when considering that. Okay, like with everything else in life, you need to prepare before you go out and shoot something. Right? What does that mean? Let's go through this one by one. Review the settings of your camera. Okay, if you have camera like this is what I use a lot of. My my iPhone 11. There are many iPhones that have good cameras too. The smaller iPhones and the iPhones that came before this are actually a little bit more stable, because when you grip it in your hand, it's more stable. Okay, so the first rule that I tell people is you should review the settings of your camera. Things like, what is the quickest way to open your camera app, or the best shutter release option? These are things that you need to think about. Where is that? I'm losing something. Okay, that is something that you need to know, so that when the time comes that and this happens to me all the time, like I see something that I really want to shoot, I really want to take a picture of, and I'm not ready. So it's such a big frustration for me. So I had to learn the quickest way to open my camera app, and the best shutter release button. So if you're somebody with an iPhone like this, so you probably know by now that just doing this, swiping left, can open the camera app instantly, and there are other ways to do it. You can also tap that camera icon at the bottom long enough, and then it'll also go instantly to the camera app. So every phone camera has a quick way of opening its camera app, and you should always be able to do that. So you have to learn how to do that before you actually go out using your camera. All right, so of course, that's just for phone camera. Of course, for those of you who are used to using the DSLR, I use a Canon Mark II, which I've been using for work for many years, and I'm happy with it. Of course, I used it a lot for advertising and information. I've shot a lot of times for Vibal for their books. Professionally, of course, it's the best. It's the best tool that you can have. But like I said, right now more pictures are being shot by camera phones than any other device. So it's good to be very well attuned with your equipment, with your phone camera. Okay, so in any case, in whatever device you're using, you have to make sure your batteries are charged and your storage media is ready. Storage media meaning your CF cards or your SD cards should be ready They should be ready to take on content or files. You know, make sure they're not full, and make sure you know it's all dumped into your storage and ready. And you're ready to shoot. Okay, so don't go out when you have a DSLR camera. Don't go out without checking if you have those media or the storage. Okay, it's happened to me twice that I went to a shoot without my CF cards, and it's horrible. Don't let it happen to you. Okay, you also have to make sure that your phone, even your phones or your devices, are fully charged. So if you have a plan to shoot the following day, you need to make sure you charge it the night before. Clean your lenses. Clean your lenses. Lenses like, oops, sorry. This generally they're good and they're impervious to scratches, but they're not impervious to damage. But you know, you have to make sure that this part is always clean. All right? Don't get the habit of touching it, but you can use like your T-shirt, you know, part of your T-shirt, to gently rub, and then make sure there's no like sand or anything abrasive on it when you do rub. You know that. So this is something that you can easily fix by blowing on it. Yeah, just like that, and then you use your T-shirt. Okay. Okay. Or anything soft that you can use. And so when it's clean, that's good. So, all right, before you shoot, you also have, if it's an outdoor shoot, you have to check if you're, check for the weather, right? I don't know a lot of people who would like to shoot in rainy weather, but whenever, you know, whenever I do plan for an outdoor shoot, I make it a point to check the weather. You can take pictures with an umbrella, and it's been done. So just check the weather so you know you'll be prepared. All right. If it's a shoot that's involving people, you might have to do preparations for wardrobe or props. What will be the outfits that they will be wearing? What props will you be using? Will you be using flashlights? Will you be using, you know, umbrellas or whatever else that you need to tell your story? Okay. Okay, reflectors and lighting. I am a fan, let me stop sharing for a while. I am a fan of natural light. And I also use a lot of flash and continuous lighting, especially when I'm using my DSLR in corporate and advertising shoots. But I really love natural light, and I think it's the best. It's like, it's the most even and the most natural, of course. And we always have to strive towards what's more natural, right? Like especially when we're imparting information or ideas. So this is one of my most used tools. This is the foldable reflector. Let me show you a little bit about, well, this is new to many of you, but this is great. So it's something like the sun visors that you use for the car or for the windshield. So this one I ordered from online, has a white side to it, and there's also a gold side to it. So if you wanna add some warmth to the light that you're reflecting on the model or the object, this is very good. See, it catches the light and reflects it to your subject. So the nice thing with this is actually very, very insightful. You can switch the the cover of the reflector to other options. Like there's a silver lining here, which you can use for harsher light, but white. It's not warm. And then there's also a black side to it if you want to do a black bounce, meaning you don't want a lot of reflections and you don't want a lot of light, or you want to eliminate reflections from your subject. So this is a great tool to have. It's very handy and very easy to store. I just store this on the pocket of my bag whenever I have to go out. Okay, and this is another tool that you would like to have when you're using camera phones, the tripod. Okay, this is a desk tripod. Of course, you are welcome to use the real tripods, the ones that stand on the floor. But most of the time, you know, when it's inconvenient for you to carry something that long, something that large, you can use a desk tripod. Okay, this is a very good one that I picked up from Camera House, one of those shops in the mall. I use this a lot for my phone photography. So it's very useful also for videography when you're shooting a video, like an interview, for instance, and for other things, of course, for video calls. Okay, so I had to point that out because stability is so important. And another tool that I really like bringing around is a piece of masking tape. I'm not sure, but you know, I have so many uses for this, and you'll probably find your own uses. But it's something that's very useful for me for fixing things while you're doing a shoot. Okay, let's get back to the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, reflector lighting. All right, backdrop. All right. Well, of course, when you're doing, you know, like what I do, advertising photography or portrait photography, you would like to have a plain background or a background that doesn't clash with your subject, or it doesn't draw attention away from your subject. So your subject is the most important thing in your picture, and using the right backdrop is key. When you do not have a backdrop, okay, so backdrops come in all shapes and sizes. If you don't have a backdrop, this is what you do. When you're outdoors, choose a backdrop that is, you know, that doesn't have a lot of crazy patterns, that's not too noisy visually. So as plain as possible, you know, it could be a white wall, it could be a black wall, just something that's not going to clash with your subject. It's not going to take attention away from your subject. So choose a backdrop that's you know, it could be a wall, or it could be a field of very, very simple patterns, you know, like forest trees can be a good backdrop. Even buildings can be a good backdrop. You just need to make sure that it doesn't take away from your subject. And then lastly, I do think that everybody has to have a plan, a good plan, you know, a shoot timetable. You have to plan what time you're going to shoot. If you are familiar with the term, the golden hour, I think about that a lot. This is the time from the time the sun rises and before the time that the sun sets. Okay, the golden hour differs from nation to nation, but it's from 5:30 a.m. to maybe 7:30 a.m. and then also from let's say 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. It depends on really where you are, but basically, I love these times because it's when the sky or the sun is not too harsh. There's just a soft, even glow everywhere, and it does wonders for the skin tone or any surfaces that are outdoors. It just really gives a really natural, beautiful glow. So I love shooting during golden hour. Okay, more on the PowerPoint. All right. Camera phones, stability is key. All right. The reason is steady, is sharp. We always need to be sharp, right? We do not like blurred photos generally. By that, I mean the subject should never be blurred. Okay. What are the things we need to consider? Smaller phones or smaller cameras are generally easier to handle, meaning they can be steadier in your hands. So there is a clear advantage to using smaller phones than bigger phones, or maybe as opposed to a tablet, a phone is really better to use. With regard to hand and finger placement for a good grip, let me show you really quickly what I mean. Okay, so here's your camera, and normally, okay, People always use camera like this, like vertically like that. But you know, if you're going to use it like a real camera, you do it that way. Okay. So depending on whether you're right-handed or you're left-handed, the right way, and this is how I normally shoot. Okay. Okay. Because this is this is for an iPhone 11. Okay. It's different for other cameras, but for this one, I just want to show you how I grip the camera so it's steady. So this is where the volume buttons are. It's also where the shutter is. Okay, and okay, let's say I'm taking a picture. I'm taking a picture of the screen. Notice how I place my fingers. There are 3 fingers right at the back of the camera. There's one finger. There's one finger, actually, 2 fingers. There's this finger that holds it, and the thumb it's also keeping it steady, and then there's this one finger at the bottom. So all in all, this makes for a really good grip. Okay, and then your right hand, your fingers are free to navigate or to work with the settings that are on the screen, right? So you can do it this way, and you can do it the other way. You can do it with your other hand, and then you know your thumb is able to reach the shutter or able to do anything else when you shoot a photo. Okay, so the reason for that is that you know you need to keep the phone as stable as you can, right? So is it enough to just do that? Like I see a lot of people doing this. Okay, is that very stable? The answer is not very stable. What normally can be done better is if you rest your elbows on your body, and your body can be resting on a solid object like a bench or a chair. And then while resting your elbow, you can frame your photo like that and hold your camera like that. So that's a very stable way of doing the of holding your camera. Okay. Okay. Other hand, all right, we discussed that. You use your other hand for the on-screen settings. Like I mentioned just now, leading on a stable object is also very useful. Like when you're outdoors and you don't have a tripod, of course, and then something that you need to be sharp, something that you need to be completely sharp, and so you can't be unstable. You rest on an object. So sometimes, I don't know if you can see this, if you're outside and there's nothing but a bench or a tree stump, you go and lean on that tree stump, on that bench. You can either use your knees, you know, and then you rest your elbows on your knees, and then you take the shot while doing that. Okay. You can also, like I said, lean on a wall or sit on something solid and rest your elbows and then hold your camera like that. Okay. So either way, you'll get a stable and clear, sharp picture for that. Okay. What else is there? Oh, yeah. This is cute. I've been doing this for a while, but I don't know if other people do it. You inhale before you click, so that when you do click, you're not really moving the camera because of your breathing. So inhale before you click, and then you exhale. So I don't know if that's really important, but you know, this really works for me to keep that in mind. And then when you do tap the settings on your phone, don't tap too hard. Or a lot of people do this, like right after they shoot, they shoot 1, 2, 3, and then they click, and then they move right away. Do not move abruptly after the shot. Okay, that means that after the shoot, okay, 1, 2, 3, and click. Sometimes if it's low light, the camera needs a few more seconds to capture the picture. So make sure not to move right after taking the shot. Okay, give yourself 1 or 2 seconds more. Let me talk about perspective this time. Photographing your subject straight on is sometimes the right choice, but you can create visual impact. And we all want visual impact, ladies and gentlemen. We need to make sure that our photos are not ordinary. You know, we need to make sure they command attention, and it grabs attention. You can create visual impact by moving the camera left, right, above, and below. So when you're beneath the subject, it often makes them or it appear more powerful to the viewer. Conversely, when you're above the subject, it makes them or it appear more diminutive. I photographed this, I took this shot in Paris at the Pont des Arts. It's a bridge that doesn't exist anymore because of, there was a year, I think 2015 it was, when they had to take down this bridge because of the weight of all the padlocks that were on the bridge. This is a bridge where everybody, all the tourists puts padlocks on them to, I don't know, to immortalize their love or for whatever else reason. But I had the great fortune of seeing this bridge before it was taken down. So this bridge doesn't exist anymore, this exact bridge, but they built a new bridge in place of it. But it's now like it has fiberglass covers, so people cannot put padlocks on it anymore. But yeah, anyway, this was a day where I went out early morning and I took the shot. This was actually taken with the DSLR. But it's really much easier to take this by an iPhone. I kid you not, right? These days, I favor my iPhone over my DSLR. And it's for that reason that, when you're shooting outdoors and you're shooting on the fly, it's really more convenient to carry a smaller camera. Okay. Leading lines. Okay. All right. Before that, I just wanted to say that the perspective I used here, okay, I think for me, I wanted to emphasize the point that this was such a romantic concept, putting all these padlocks on the bridge. It actually, this was in 2014 or 2013, I believe, when I first went. Well, it's not the first time I went to Paris, but this was the time that I was in a really good relationship, and we were feeling romantic and all that, and we went on this bridge and say, oh, let's put a padlock on it. And then I wanted to remember this moment forever, so I just sat on the floor and took this, and I was just so totally affected by all these people, all these lovers, all these people who would like to remember this moment on that bridge. It's just so overwhelming to me. And there's this gentleman who was with a woman, of course she's not seen, who is probably talking about the same thing. So this is a good story to tell, and I found that at that moment I had to take this picture. So the perspective helped me very much in telling this story. If for the most part of the picture, you see the padlocks. So the padlocks were the most important subject here. I wanted to show, the beauty and the patterns that are formed by all these padlocks, which have a meaning for many of the people who put them there on this bridge. Right. Leading lines. Consider the shapes and lines where they draw your eye. So if they're taking you out of the photograph or away from the primary subject, you'll probably want to consider a different composition. Let the roads lead where you want the eye to go. Okay, so this is basically about using lines to emphasize your subject. Okay, this was shot in Abu Dhabi in the Grand Mosque. Of course, very starkly, you will see the woman in black and this gentleman who went to this mosque, and everything else is white. But I do want to emphasize the massiveness, the largeness of this venue. Okay, it was one of the most spectacular things I've seen in my life, and having somebody dressed in black in all this white is very stark and very arresting for me. So I had to take that picture. I took this with a DSLR. But the use, I chose this, the use of these lines to lead the subject to this woman. Okay. And I could also put her here if I wanted to, and still do the same. But since my subject's really the woman, I wanted her to be closer than anything else in the frame. All right. So you get it. You can use the lines in the photo to lead to your subject, to make it, to give it more emphasis. Framing with objects. A subject against a white background can often be simple and effective if you have a good subject. This is Kylie Padilla. I shot this in a forest in Laguna. So if you have a boring subject, oh, Kylie's not boring, I assure you that. Like an ordinary house, a black background, or a clear sky, it isn't going to be very compelling. Instead, try framing your subject with surrounding objects. So she's in a forest. I wanted to show the forest, but I wanted her to still be the main attraction, the main subject. So I used this branch, that bush, that shrub, and some fear. But I wanted to make sure that anything around her face is just light. Okay. Actually, there's very little manipulation I did with this picture, and it's one of the most perfect pictures I've ever taken. So I'm very happy with this. So again, frame with other objects around it. It makes for good emphasis, and it makes for a more interesting composition. Okay. Like I said, this is not a full-on course about photography that it's impossible to cover in an hour, hour and a half. And there are many online courses in photography, and from very credible sources and very reputable experts, But what we're talking about here now is just simple, practical information. Aperture, you're going to hear that a lot if you take a camera photography course. It's the opening of the lenses. When the in your device, it's a I don't know how to describe it. It's a device or in your camera or your device that controls the amount of light that you let into the camera, for the exposure. Okay, that's so technical. All that you probably need to know is that the larger the opening or the wider the aperture, the more light you let in with each exposure. So the smaller the opening or the narrower the aperture, the less light you let in. This picture that I have of this gentleman, this is at 5:30 in the afternoon. So inside the room, it was quite dark already. Okay, so I had to open the aperture, make the aperture wider because I wanted more light to come in. Otherwise, this picture will be too dark. Okay, so I wanted to show the blue of his eyes, and I want to show the skin, which is fair. Okay, this was shot in Paris. So this guy's French. So we are, in this case, you could notice that some portion of the subject is blurred. That's okay because I wanted to really emphasize his eyes, and how beautiful his eyes were. So this is an effect of a wide aperture. Okay, again, this is the effect of a wide aperture. So with a wide aperture, your depth of field, and I'll explain this a little later, your depth of field is narrower. That only means that there are fewer objects in the picture that are in focus. So again, a wider aperture, more light goes in, but there are less things that are in focus. All right, this is depth of field. If you've seen photographs with a subject in focus and beautiful blurred backgrounds, this is often the effect of a wide aperture and a narrow depth of field, or less objects are in focus. Okay, focal length also affects the depth of field. What is focal length? That's too technical, but just so you know, it's the size of the lens. All right, you have a telephoto lens, you have wide lens, you have all those kinds of lenses. The kind of lens also affects the depth of field. So let me demonstrate the depth of field here. This is a photo of Dieter. Dieter is actually about 20 meters away from those trees. And that was important for me. to be able to capture the shot. If you notice, there's this bright portion of his face as opposed to this one. That's because we shot this really late in the afternoon, about 5:30 in the afternoon. And then I used a reflector to shine the remaining sunshine on this side of his face. Okay. I chose to shoot at 5:30 in the afternoon so that I can take the shot. Because if it's too bright, I won't be able to take the shot. I won't be able to use a wide aperture, and I won't be able to use a depth of field, depth of field to capture this picture. Okay. Anyway, you can look up depth of field and you can look up narrow aperture manipulation online, and there's plenty of resources that you can read up on it. Okay, so this is another example of the use of depth of field. This is in Cebu, and this is in Kuala Lumpur. I was taking a photo of the hand of a baby orangutan in an orangutan orphanage. Okay, did you know that they have that in Malaysia? All right, shutter speed is another fun thing to use when you're using your DSLR, or some cameras, some new models of cameras now have this setting, and you can manipulate shutter speed for many brilliant effects that you want. Like in this picture, for instance, they used a very slow shutter speed, 1/30th of a second, to make these very lush, very silky pictures of the water, of the flowing stream. You can also use a fast shutter speed, or 1/60th of a second to 200th of a second, to freeze motion, which is very interesting. So especially with dance, I've shot live performances with dance, with ballet shows, and with concerts, and this is very useful for me, manipulating the shutter speed. So, yep, very exciting. You can try your camera on how to use this and how to manipulate the shutter speed in your camera. Okay, ISO, you'll probably come across this. This is the result of a higher ISO. ISO is basically, I don't know what ISO means, but it's basically sensitivity to light. So the higher you increase your ISO, the more noise you get, yes, but you also show more of your subject. Okay, this is quite a little blurred, but I shot this in complete darkness on top of a mountain because I was trying to capture some of the aurora borealis in the back. So I put my camera mode on a long exposure, like 20 seconds. And yes, you can guess it. We had to stand completely still for 20 seconds for us to even be recognizable in this picture. This one was shot, oh, sorry. This one was shot when it was very dark inside the forest. This was about 6 p.m. at night. And I had to put my ISO to 800 to achieve this shot. Okay, so again, ISO, look it up. I can't touch very much of it in this course, but look it up and how you can apply it to your cameras. All right, this is very important. This is something that any device can be applied to any device. All right, composition and framing. All right, these are two principles in photography that photographers abide with. The rule of thirds, which basically says your subject or your focal point should fall in any of these thirds. And this makes for a more interesting composition. Not that putting your subject in the middle is not good. You know, there are a lot of reasons why you should put your subject in the middle, especially if it's advertising, or especially if it's for learning applications. But a lot of photographers and a lot of award-winning photographs ascribe to this rule, the rule of thirds. So that means you can divide the frame into 3 parts, either vertically and horizontally, and your subject should fall in any of these thirds, like in this case. Now, on the right side, you see the Fibonacci sequence. This is a principle promoted by Leonardo da Vinci, one of the greatest artists of all time, and he came up with this with this graphic guide, which is very much like the design on a nautilus. If you know that mollusk or that sea animal, which has the shell that's similar to this, the Fibonacci sequence is like it's a graphic guide or as to how a composition can be made more interesting and more natural and more arresting. So a lot of photographers use this, the rule of thirds and the Fibonacci sequence. I use it myself. Even in casual snapshots like this that I took in the of Piolo Pascual in the back, what do you call it? Backstage of ASAP. I like using the rule of thirds to emphasize my subject. So I put Piolo in the first third, in the leftmost third of the vertical, and I feel this made it a more interesting photo, you know, apart from all the photos that Piolo's in the middle. And on the right side, okay, this is a shot I took of two models. I wanted to emphasize the bodies. And so this is negative space because I wanted this to be the main focus. And I used basically thought of the Fibonacci sequence when I shot this photo. So this makes for really interesting composition. But having said all that, you can break rules. You can break rules. If you're just trying to take a pleasing picture, yes, use the rules by all means. But if you're trying to tell something that with the photograph, you can do it. You know, you can figure out how you want to convey it and compose your image accordingly. You can break the rules, but you know, it's really up to you. And who knows, you could come up with a better composition than anybody else. Okay, so like I said, I've been taking photos for a long time, all of 15 years. And most of my photography is model photography or people photography. So that means portraits, event coverages, and selfies for myself. And these are some of the pictures I've shot over the years. I love family photos. I like this. It makes me feel like I'm part of history and immortalizing this very important moment in families. And I love being part of that. That's the same reason I like weddings. Model photography allows me to express myself. I find that photography is one of the best artistic expressions that I've gotten used to doing. And this is Rita Daniela of GMA Artists, and this was shot for her debut. So I needed to, of course, make preparations for composing this picture. We needed to pick out that hat. We needed to pick out the right makeup and that right hair placement. Okay, so this is not accidental. Even that light behind her is not accidental. I had to put that there. And this is a gray background. Oh, sorry about that. This is a gray background that we made really dark, with the exception of that really of that bright spot. So this composition needed hours of preparation. So, well, not really hours, just a few minutes. But the case in point is we needed preparation. This is more straightforward. This gentleman, his name is Andres Navillo. He's from Chile, and I wanted to, more than anything else, emphasize the beauty of his face. So it's right in the center, but as you can see, it's framed by nicely groomed hair, and I need to make sure that everything in the back was stark white so that his face would stand out. Okay. Generally, here are some tips. Do not shoot against the light unless you want silhouettes. Okay, look it up. Against the light is generally not a lot of people use it, but if you want to make a point or some drama, then you can use against the light. You can shoot against the light. But generally, if you're emphasizing a subject or you know, it's good to always find out where the light source is and do not go against it. Use natural light whenever possible. Use reflectors and diffusers. I've shown you the diffuser early on. Master your flash and learn how to estimate distance. Okay, So if you are using a flash, learn how to bounce it. You know, you don't want it to be harsh on people's skin. So you can place your flash in a way that it bounces instead of just goes straight to the subject. Okay, we're on the tail end of our little course here. Here are some more things that you need to remember when you're shooting people or when you're shooting with at events. And it's the same principle when you take stills, meaning you're shooting documents or you're shooting an artwork or you're shooting a house or inanimate objects. This can also apply. Well, in some cases. Okay. Number one, makeup, hair, and wardrobe. I know you don't have to be a makeup artist or a hairstylist or a wardrobe stylist, but it pays to have some sense of how this is going to work out. You need to prepare. Okay, you need to coordinate with these people to make sure that your model or your models are ready. Choose an interesting background that doesn't clash with the subject. Okay? We've discussed this early on. Find the best facial and body angle whenever possible. So this is something that you can only achieve when you've spent enough time with your subject or with your model. Okay, sometimes, and this is true, people have different angles. People have good angles. People have bad angles. And it's sometimes up to the photographer to find that. So basically, the rule is you have to take what is most flattering for the person. Do not take too long when you're posing people, okay, to preserve spontaneity. Meaning, you know those people, I really dislike it when people just take so much time setting the camera. And then, all right, okay, one, two. That's so irritating. And the reason is, you know, people want to not get it over with as fast as possible, but people do need to prepare. You know, they hold their breath, they put in their good pose and all that. So you need to give them time. You need to give them time when you, a few seconds, but you need to be fast. You need to be quick, and don't let your, don't take too long when you're posing people to make the photo more spontaneous and more natural. Mind the hands and legs. I'm a stickler for this. You know, when I'm posing people, I need to make sure that the hands or legs are in a good position, that they don't clash, with whatever I need, whatever it is I need to. Let me demonstrate. No, one of my pet peeves is when the hands just dangle like this. Okay, unless it's for a really special purpose, I need the hands to be somewhere else in the body, like maybe in front like this, or maybe on the waist, you know, to denote power or authority, or maybe here to denote authority or power. And but it just needs to be somewhere, but not here, because this looks so tentative. Okay, you could also use the hands to frame the face. You know, when you're looking at, you know, if you want to emphasize the face and you see a lot of models doing this, or see a lot of models doing this, or, you know, maybe like that, okay, to make a statement, or this to make a statement, you know, you can use hands whatever which way, and it could make your picture more interesting than just, you know, just a head and shoulders thing. Okay, getting back. All right, count audibly to let subjects know when you're clicking the button. This is very important. Count loudly so they know. And most importantly, count. All right, so they need to be ready. They need to be ready. So take 1, 2, and then click. Normally, people just hear 1 and 2 from me, and they find it funny. But that's what I do. I count 1, 2, and then don't talk anymore, because the camera will move. You just talk, and then you click on 3. All right, so that's what I do. Yeah, just make sure they hear you when you count. So in groups, arrange according to size or height, or dominant color if possible. So this is something that you need to judge on your own at the moment. You know? The idea is to make sure that the photo is balanced. It doesn't, you know, in a group, you need to make sure there's, you know, unless you're emphasizing, you know, like for instance, in a wedding, you want to emphasize the bride and groom. Okay, they can all be in the center. The bride and groom can be in the center because they're the center of attention. But you know, if it's in a group where you want the attention to be even, you need to arrange them according to height or size or dominant color so that it's even. The attention is even. All right, this is important. Take 4 to 5 shots of a photo. Okay, do not just take one. Do not just take one, because they're, especially if it's in a group, okay, you will have problems like people have their eyes closed or people looking at a different way or people smiling in a funny way, okay? So always take 4 or 5 photos of, shots of a photo, especially, you know, if your camera or your phone camera has an HDR or high dynamic range function. This allows you to choose later on the tone or the dynamic range of your photo. Later on, you can choose the right exposure that you like. So again, rule number 1 is find out as much about your device as possible. Okay, so this is just a note. I think this is the last slide. This is just a note on editing, printing, and posting. All right, keep in mind, underexposed is better than overexposed. Okay, what's underexposed? It's too dark. Okay, so a photo is too dark, meaning it's a little darker than what you wanted. No, you can't be too dark either. Okay, so what I'm saying here is underexposed is a little dark and overexposed is a little too bright. Between a little dark and a little too bright, darker is better. Because when it's overexposed, when a photo is overexposed, that means you lose or you lost a lot of details already and you cannot get it back. Whereas an underexposed or a dark photo can still be manipulated in Photoshop or many other apps, and you can still lighten and get more details more visible. Mind your file size. All right, why do I put this up? Sometimes it depends on what you're using the photos for. When I shoot for advertising, the advertising agencies all require for high res. Okay, so I have file sizes of up to 21 megabytes per photo. That's very, very large and that's very, very heavy. It's enough to it's enough to print a what do you call it? A 75 to 150 meter billboard on EDSA. Okay, so but it's not all the time that you need your file size to be this big. Okay, you can also shoot small or medium or regular, especially just for online usage. You can use smaller file sizes for this. But you know, mind your file size. This is a decision that you need to decide on at the onset. As a rule, I always take large. You know, if your camera has large, medium, small resolution, always go for large. File naming and storage. If you're like a very busy photographer like myself, it's easier to lose track of what you're shooting and where you're putting your files or your photos. So, you know, deciding on how to name your files, like what I do is I name my file like with the name of the subject and the date, because sometimes I take multiple shots of the same subject. So subject like David Fabros, May 2020. Sometimes that's the name. That's how I name my folder. And all the files that are in the folder are from that shoot. Okay, so it also helps me with storage because you know, I run a lot. I use a lot of my 4 terabyte and 3 terabyte storage hard drives. So it's very important that I am able to quickly access my files, and I do this by very accurate file naming. Editing for publications. Okay. Sometimes you need to take photos for publications. Needs stuff that needs to be published on a newspaper or on a magazine. Normally, they require you for something that is of a certain DPI or dots per inch. Okay, that's called resolution. And normally they ask you for anywhere between 300 to 600 DPI. All right. So pictures that you take with your iPhone, with your camera, of course, that depends on the setting. But generally, what the iPhones take are high resolution. So most often on the knob they're 300 DPI. But I could be wrong. But generally, the pictures that I shoot with my iPhone are big enough to use for publication. So you just make sure, and you can look this up in the internet on what sizes to use for publications. But normally it's between 300 to 600 DPI. And you always have to defer to the editor or to whoever is coordinating with you. Like, can you ask them, what file size do I need for my pictures to be? Royalty, copyright, and model release. This could get important if you're using photography for commercial reasons or for legal reasons. Yeah, it's important that you consider royalty. Of course, when you shoot a photo, you own that photo, but you might not have permission from that subject to use that photo for whatever else. So you need to look into royalty, copyright, and model release. Model release is just a document that you make the model sign to give you a right to use the photo. Yes, you do own the photo, but you don't have full rights to exhibiting that photo because of the model that's in it. So before you expose that photo, or before you publicly or commercially use that photo with a model, you have to make sure you have a model release. And you can look it up online, what a model release is. Photoshop, very useful. I don't always use it, but Photoshop is one of the most useful things in your life. Okay, when you like when you like taking photos. Of course, you can download the app at a cost, and you can learn all about it from the resources online. Freeware apps on photo editing. Okay, Photoshop is not the only app that you can use for editing. It's wonderful that there's many mobile apps that are like Photoshop that you can use to edit your photos instantly and very quickly. So look those up online. Cropping is one of the functions that you use with these apps, and you can use the principles of framing and composition, like the Fibonacci sequence and the rules of thirds when cropping your photo. So sometimes the only way you can shoot a photo at that time is, if you shoot the subject in the middle, but cropping allows you to use the rule of thirds or the Fibonacci sequence to make your photo more interesting. And if you are using somebody else's photo, or if you're using your photo, if you can, make sure you put an acknowledgement on who the photo belongs to or who shot that photo. Okay? All right, that seems to be it. All right. That's an earful. Now I am ready for your questions. Okay, I have some questions here from the chat. How do we know that the angle we are taking is good? All right, will the camera model affect the quality of the picture? Do you suggest any phone model or band to use your photography? All right, how do we know that the angle that we are taking is good? I would like to say there are rules on this, but there are actually, these days, there are none. I just know that if you, using an iPhone, again, and let me show this to you. Okay, this way. Okay. So let's say I'm shooting this crystal candle holder, this water candle holder. Okay. So I don't know if you see my camera. Okay. So shooting it like this, head on. Of course, I see details, and it's quite straightforward. Okay, but shooting it like this. Okay, I just showed you the position of the camera. Shooting it like this. Okay, if if you can see, shooting it above eye level makes the candle holder, I don't know how to describe it, less important or weaker, or you know, I seem to picture the candle holder to be just a small part of the big composition of that side of the living room. I'm sorry, you're seeing some parts of my messy living room. But yeah, that's just to demonstrate what happens when the angle is high. Now let me show you when the angle is low. Okay, so same candle holder, I'm shooting it low. Okay, now that is when I shot it from a low angle. So it gives the object more dominance, like it looks larger than life, or it's the most important thing in that room. Okay, so do we have a right angle? Do we have a good angle? It really depends on the story that you want to tell or how you want to portray your subject. Okay, so if I want a subject, if I want, for example, to appear a lot more vulnerable and sensitive and weaker, you know, I would put the camera position to be like this, which for a lot of people is favorable. Okay, so, and more sympathetic, empathic. Yeah, I think that's the word. But you know, if the angle is like this, so I see more powerful and I see more authoritative. Okay, so that's the difference with angles. All right. Will the camera model affect the quality of the picture? Yeah. Well, the principles of composition, the principles of aperture, the principles of light, they're the same for all devices. They're the same for all devices. What the choice of device can affect is the stability of your shots. Okay, like I said, if it's the great thing, and I use it whenever I travel, I just use my iPhone or my phone camera. I don't ever use my DSLR anymore because it takes me many moments to even prepare the camera to shoot something that I want to shoot instantaneously. So for that reason, the camera phone is the most useful camera for me these days. And because of the iPhone 11 has so many great features, it really makes taking good pictures a lot easier. So yes, it does affect the quality of the picture, but not so much. Not so much. I think it really depends on the photographer and how you handle your device and how much you know your device. What is the difference between the photos for classroom instruction and for campus journalism? For me, nothing. I mean, a picture is a picture and it tells stories. So what you put in that frame tells you if it's good for classroom or for campus journalism. Okay, if you're telling stories like that clown that I saw, of course it's different to set that up. It's something that you just capture at the moment, you know. But you know, like I mentioned earlier on, cropping can help you do that composition. But yeah, composition is key because when you compose something, you immediately decide what is the most important thing in that picture. I mean, yes, your subject is the most important thing, but what do you want to say about that subject? Is your subject leaving or coming? Is your subject happy or sad? Is your subject powerful or weak? Okay, these are things that you can decide on by composition or by lighting. So to answer your question, the difference between the photos for classroom instruction and campus journalism, it really depends on the composition and the story that you want to tell. Okay, Vloggers are rampant nowadays. I mean, there are a lot of them, no? Do you have any opinion or comments on how they frame or do their craft? I can't say I've seen enough to make a generalization about that. But what is important is when you take a photo, is that it's clear, it's not blurred. I think that's the most important thing. Or, you know, then again, the principles of composition, most important. You need to be able to emphasize the most important thing about that photo. Okay, so there are photos that just shoot the instance or the moment or the situation, but you can make that photo better by zooming in or zeroing in on the most important part of that picture. Either the rule of thirds or the Fibonacci sequence, or just straight on, just, you know, just focus on the eyes, right in dead center like that. Or just, you know, if you want to be completely, you know, if I'm a photographer and I want to show people that what I've worked on, I would stand and give due attention to the frames on my wall to tell a story that yes, I'm a photographer. I give importance to my work, so I frame them, and it's part of my house where I live. So I basically live my profession. So stories like that are important. If you're a vlogger and you use a lot of photos, it's very important that your photos are clear. You have a steady hand when you're taking photos, and you're good with talking to people. You're good with asking people to pose for you. And basically it's a skill that you need to master, how to use your phone for whatever situation that you require it to do. What I mean is your camera phone. So yeah, stability, steadiness, those are the most important things when you're using a camera for learning or for vlogging. So guys, I don't know if I've given you enough information, but this is a pleasure. It's been a pleasure imparting all of these information to you. I definitely encourage you to use this time, use this quarantine time to look at more gainful information about the craft of photography and videography. I'm sorry I could not have time to impart more video-specific photos. Video-specific information. But I'm really generally more of a photographer than a videographer. But I could safely say that a lot of the stuff that we spoke about, composition and lighting, also applies to videography. So, but you know, there are people who are better than me in explaining that. And I hope that you had you got some information from this, and I look forward to sharing more with you in subsequent Zoom meetings. But thank you, Vibal. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you all for tuning in.